Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. I know I've been gone for a while. I've been making a bunch of projects and have been very busy yet again, like I usually am. I've been doing so much editing for videos, loads of just prep work for other videos, and I'm currently in the process of editing a behemoth video for the channel, which has been taking up a lot of time. But today I thought I'd do another tier list video. I love doing tier list videos. I think it's an easy way for me to talk about something I like or dislike, and also have a ranking up there because my brain's filled with rankings of different things. Earlier today I started watching Divergent because, you know, I hadn't seen it in a while, and I've been rewatching a bunch of YA kind of dystopian films, and like with the rise of, you know, Sunrise and the Reaping and that getting an adaptation, I thought, you know, it's quite popular to talk about YA stuff again, and it's kind of coming back into the mainstream, which is either a good thing or a very bad thing, and good lord, there's a lot of bad YA stuff out there. And I got, you know, 17 minutes into Divergent, and then I DNF'd watching it. It's a genuine struggle to watch that film as an adult rather than, you know, a young teenager, because when you're a young teenager you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm dauntless, I'm so dauntless coded, and like I love that, and like I'm so cool and parkour and all that. I did a lot of parkour when I was younger, which is definitely attributed from that film, and I just couldn't. It was just cringe. And Triss as a character, immediately the dumbest person in existence. She's just so just like, oh, but this is the test. This is what we have to do. And then when she goes into the test, the cool, dauntless woman with tattoos and black nail varnish kind of just says, what is it with you Amity people, or whatever faction she's in, I don't care. And then she's just so dumb that she answers a rhetorical question. It's not even a question either. It's so... she's just so thick. And then when she goes into the actual place where they go into their new faction, she meets someone from Erudite, I think it is, the blue smart sciencey ones, like the leader of that, you know, the hot female villain of this film. She's just I don't understand why her characterization is so poor. I get that the character's supposed to probably have social anxiety, but as, you know, as somebody who has that, and when you're writing about it, you gotta write it well, otherwise it can just come across as just the character being an absolute idiot. Imagine having your last name be Burger. Imagine that. And another weird thing about the film, Ansel Elgort is Triss's brother. And in the same year, they're in an adaptation of The Fault in Our Stars, where they're in a relationship. It's just a really weird kind of thing to happen, and it's difficult to watch with your in like the back of your head that they're lovers in that film. And it's even difficult when you watch Fault in Our Stars and you have Divergent in the back of the head. It's like, it kind of messes with you a little bit. And I might as well just start off with Divergent and start with this tier list. I'm not doing any fancy things with, like, you know, all this. It's just standard S tier, D tier, all that. You know, we're going back to basics, and I cannot be bothered to do anything complicated. Divergent. I think. Oh, how do I categorize? Maybe I should categorize this. You know, and I'm just gonna state it now. There's no perfect dystopian YA film or adaptation or book or anything. It doesn't exist. I think that's the perfect ranking. They're perfect. I volunteer. It's Triss, Scream, and then Greenie. Or I don't know how you spell it. I read half of Maze Runner and I got bored. So I think you know, Divergent. I rewatched the first 17 minutes. It was pretty bad. I'd say like a 3 or a 4 going in. Cinematography especially as a choice, and just, I don't know, I really disliked a lot of what I saw on this 17, and it was slow. It was really slow, those 17 minutes, and the film's 2 hours and a half. I don't know, it's not the worst thing ever. When I was younger, I gave this film like an 8 out of 10. Bear that in mind, is a drop out of, like, it's halved since. And just, I think, oh, it's, even as a dystopian, it's not that good. It's just kind of boring, it's dull, and the world building is awful, because you have the narration in the opening of, you know, Triss telling you what the factions are and who they are, instead of learning about it by yourself, which some other films here do far better. So, you know what, I'm going to put it in Triss Scream. You know, I think that's a perfect place to put Divergent. Just, it's in a league of its own and untouchable, or so you think. But one thing you'll notice about this tier list is there's like other films here too. It's not just, you know, the generic Hunger Games, Divergent, Maze Runner. You know, you got City of Ember, you got I Am Number 4, The Host, The Fifth Wave, The Giver, Ender's Game. I'm not going to rank some of those films because I haven't seen them. I also haven't read them, but this is purely based off of the films, so I won't. I mean, as you can see, it doesn't include the newest Hunger Games film, which I have not seen yet. So that was a lie. I recently watched the new Hunger Games film 2 weeks after editing this video, as I got very busy. My friends from the Netherlands and London came over, and I just couldn't edit at all for that entire week. And during that time, I watched the new Hunger Games with my sister, the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and boy oh boy, was I not expecting it to be tolerable at all. And it was a really good film. I was very surprised. I was expecting it to be very slow because of the 2 hours and 40 minutes runtime that is there, and the fact that it was the longest Hunger Games film, and just the low ratings that the film got. And as I was watching it, I was just like, why do people not like this film? Why are the ratings low? And then I was just like, wait, is there something going to be in the second or third act that's going to jump out and get me and ruin the entire film? But nothing really ruined my enjoyment. I really enjoyed my time watching this film. There are issues, I will get into those soon, and they become very apparent as I talk about it. But I just want to get started and say the fact that this is the 10th annual Hunger Games, and the fact that a Hunger Games film could shock me today is a feat that I don't know how you can achieve. I really like Tom Blythe, I think his name is Blythe, yeah, Tom Blythe, who plays Twink President Snow. And I do actually vaguely like the other character, Rachel Zegler's character in it. I can't remember her name, because names rarely stick out to me in films anyways. I really like the way that the entire film is presented. I love the visuals, I love the incredibly wide angle lenses that they use. And it adds something to the film that I think a lot of the other Hunger Games films does miss, is that intensity and the way that the camera moves during the games, or just during the entire visual presentation of the film. I think the last time I really enjoyed the visuals for a Hunger Games film was, in fact, the first film. And yes, this is a Twilight hoodie t-shirt. It's a Twilight t-shirt with Edward's face on it. I also love the way colours are used in this film. I love the outfits. I love the set decorations. I love the production design. There's so much, like, this film, the way it presents the capital is so well done for like an earlier kind of Panem. You know, you have cars, you have proper working cars, you have very kind of visual kind of 40s to 50s to kind of 60s style like clothing, especially when it comes to the monitors, which are heavily inspired by a lot of kind of like 60s-esque TVs and stuff that you can see literally in like Back to the Future and whatnot. I just love the way that the world is built and presented, and I really like a lot of the characters in this. I like Peter Dinklage's character. I somewhat like the president. I'll get into her character a little bit more. I like Snow in this film. I like oh, what's his name? Jesperi? Hold on. Sejanus, that's his name, and also Peter Dinklage's character is in fact called something something High Bottom, which I immediately giggled at when his name was said out loud. I laughed at that. And the president is called Dr. Volumnia Gaul. I'm probably butchering that name because I just can't do that at all. Lucy Gray, that's the name of the lead character. Well, the other lead character in this, because you have the two main leads, Snow and Lucy. I think Snow is probably the best character in the entire film. The way he is written and how he goes from this Hunger Games to the Hunger Games that we see in the main line of Hunger Games films. I think Lucy is an incredibly underdeveloped character, and my god, does she not stop singing. I would love it if she would just stop a little bit now and then, because at times I was just like, we get it, we don't need her to sing and have this hopeful thing. Also, that main Hunger Games song that I keep freaking hearing, I despise it to bits. I just stop. Also, going to that, the third act, the amount of references and fan service to the original films genuinely became so grating, I had to tune some of the film out. Just, we get it. Katniss, we get it. Are you whatever? We get it. We don't need references to these other films. We need, an actual new story, which we are telling, but we're focusing on that for some reason. Sejanus, I like his character. I like how he's kind of in the same field as Snow, but is fighting for something else. I like that a lot of these individual characters are fighting for their own cause and figuring out ways that they can play into the Hunger Games, but have it benefit towards not just them, but to a lot of people, because Snow is focused on the fact that the districts rose up and started a war, and you have Sejanus who is kind of in favour of that and is just like, why are we killing these children? Most of them weren't even like at the age of 5 when the war started, so why are we putting them into these games? I really like the fact that it not a huge amount, but it does go in that slightly. I kind of wish this film focused a little bit more on the politics, which a lot of times it does, which I appreciate. The game itself is 40 minutes of the film. It's just the second act. It's not even most of the film or like the second half. It's just a small portion of this film, and I liked that. Again, I like the fact that this film takes risks with its story and what it's doing instead of repeats what it's done beforehand. Tigress especially is a great character and has one of the best lines in the entire film that happens at the end, where Snow asks, "How do I look?" and Tigress responds with, "Just like your father." Just hats off to you. Just great, brilliant writing. Thank you. That is what I want. We're getting close to good dialogue and good characters in films again. Holy crap. I will say my biggest issue with the film is how tame it is. I think this film has the same issue as Mockingjay Part 1 and 2, where the violence is incredibly tame for a film like this. Yes, it is trying to get that audience and get more money so they can make more of these films, but at what cost? Because, you're having a game where people are murdering each other, and you're trying to cater it to a young audience where it's clearly not supposed to be. It's supposed to be for an older teenager group, but I get it, money, whatever, sure. But even then, the game is quite grim in places, which I do appreciate. While it's not grim in the violent sort of sense, it's grim in the psychological aspect of how people hunt and treat the game and what they are doing to try and get out of it. Also, another thing that I really do love about this film is the fact that Snow goes into the zoo cage with the contestants, I really like that, and the fact that like all these people are kind of all the people in the capital are, one of them is connected. Well, I believe they're students. You know, one of the students is tied to one of the contestants to try and get them sponsors, to try and make them appeal to the audience that are watching the games, because at this point in time the games aren't entirely watched because a lot of people don't agree with what's going on. And I like that the world feels big, it doesn't feel small. So hats off to the writer again for doing some good world building. I don't know how different or how similar this is from the book, and how much it is Suzanne Collins writing it, and how much it is the writer of the film. So there could be big changes, or there are no changes whatsoever, and this is what the book is like. And if so, I then want to read this book. I also do like the fact that Snow cheated. I really like that aspect, that somebody cheated in the games, and again, adding something new that we haven't seen before in the Hunger Games. Somebody cheated, or there's this other thing in there. And I like the fact that this film is bringing new, fresh ideas, while not playing onto kind of nostalgia too much, aside from there's few bits in the third act. And I'll get into the third act now. Actually, no, I won't get into the third act now. I need to talk about the president, or I believe they're the president, the Doctor. I am not a huge fan of the convenience of the snake tank and that playing into the game. And like, there's a couple things in this film that there is some sort of convenience, and it tries to present itself as some planting, and there is payoff, and I do appreciate that there's payoff to the planting, but at the same time it does come off as but at the same time it does come across as convenience. But again, you have to push this story forward somehow, so you know. And also she sings and whatever, hope. But also the present character doesn't typically feel like a leader, like or really a dictator in any way. It just feels weird that, I don't know if the people chose her to be in this kind of form of power, but it's just odd. She doesn't fit that kind of archetype, or not really many of her attributes of who she is and what she does or controls. Kind of feels like she would be the leader, but she also, I might have read the film wrong, and she actually isn't the leader, and there is currently no leader, and she's kind of trying to run things as best she can. I'm not entirely sure there, but because the film is very long and it's a lot to keep track on. But, you know, let's go on to the third act. This is where I notice in a lot of reviews where people kind of trail off and think that the film should have just ended after the games. You're wrong, because this film, while it is about the games, that's just the surface level context, and the subtext is what happens before and after the games. That's the entire point of this film. And because Snow cheated, he gets sent to District 4 to try and make his way back up to where he started, because, you know, he cheated and he has to pay for his, you know, crime of cheating. And he's just like, I want to go to District 12. And they're just like, okay, you want to go to District 12? You go to District 12. He gets sent on the train, and Sejanus joins him. And Sejanus isn't the most developed character in terms of, I guess, their friendship, but the pieces that we do see of him are enough to make me not dislike his character or think he's underdeveloped. A little bit more would have been nice, but the film isn't about him. It's about what's kind of... Oh, it is... It's difficult because there's a lot of threads in this film, and there's a lot of things going on. I do think the third act is slow. However, I like what it's doing, and I like the fact that we see more of how Snow is reacting to things in the world around him and treating it as his kind of playground, and what Sejanus is doing in terms of the revolution and kind of putting a stop to the games and putting a stop to everything and trying to do what he thinks is morally right. Lucy Gray, is that her name? Lucy Gray, unfortunately, is this is where I don't like her character anymore, and I think there's kind of no point in her being in the film other than just to tie Snow into being here. That's kind of the entire intention as to why she's there. Yeah, there's some, I don't know if I personally dislike like a lot of this third act. I do think it goes on for a little bit too long, and I do kind of find Snow's kind of breakdown towards the end of the film a little bit cringe and a little bit overacted, and I feel like they should have pulled that back a bit. Yeah, I don't know how much more I can really say. I mean, I do like the ending. I like Tigress. I like what's going on with there. I like the ending. I like where the kind of the future is going for this film. It's terrifying because especially when you watch Hunger Games, it's just like, whoa, we went from this to that. That's insane. We could have stopped this then. Yeah, I think this film is really good and I really appreciate it. And I'm going to, as I don't have a ranking with me here, I'm going to rank it probably in top of B, not top of B, in top of whatever it is, the second highest one on my ranking list. I'm going to put it there, or yeah, I'll put it there, or right next to the first Hunger Games film, because this film is really good and much better than Catching Fire, and pretty much most of these films on this list, maybe even better than Death Cure and Maze Runner, because they do have a lot better world building and a lot of what's going on makes sense. And we might as well stick on the Divergent train. Insurgent, I haven't seen Insurgent since 2016, I think, since pretty much close to the release, as it's just, I just don't feel like, I think I might have watched it twice. I don't know, it went after watching Divergent, I was like, this film's so cool, you know, and then I watched Insurgent and I was like, this is awesome, I love this film, and I think I rated it much higher than Divergent from what I remember, and also when I was younger I loved the ending, I loved the big fight scene between Triss and Triss Clone or whatever it is, I honestly can't remember. I adored this film when it came out, but thinking about the film, without having rewatched it since, and I don't know if I will ever, going based purely off memory here, this film is garbage. It's no Allegiant, but I'm going to put it below Divergent, because Divergent, even though I think it's, you know, I've only watched the first 17 minutes release recently, it still has a place in my heart, kind of, you know, that was a time period where that meant a lot to me. Insurgent, I don't care anymore. That film can die in a hole. Where is Allegiant? Where is I should say Allegiant Part 1. There you are. This is one of the worst films I've ever watched in my life. I don't think I've ever finished the film. I've tried to watch it 3 times, and every single time I kind of get to the same point, or some places I get further, or way earlier in the film. It retcons so much of the first 2 movies, and just, I swear it kills off 2 main characters in the opening or something stupid like that, and they go to Beyond the Wall, which is now red and orange sand, sci-fi kind of whatever. It's boring. It's no imagination. It's a CGI fest. The acting is worse, far worse than it has ever been. And I don't understand how you can get worse acting in these films, because they are just genuinely terrible.
Say that again. Say that again. Say that again. Say that again.
And also, for some reason, the Footloose Whiplash actor is still in these films. He's a good actor, I will give him that, but this was the era where he would just play snarky assholes just because, and it gets so boring after a while, just typecast. So, yeah, I don't want to talk much more about Divergent. I hate these films so much, and I have no desire to read the books at all. City of Ember, I will put City of Ember in its eye. Again, I haven't seen this film in a couple of years. Every time I have watched it, I've really enjoyed myself. And would probably put it up higher, if I was doing this a few years ago. But since I haven't watched it in a while, I'm just going to put it there. I've always enjoyed watching this film. I've always thought it was fun. I really liked the world building of this film a lot more than all the others. I like the fact that they are in an underground city and there's a dictatorship that's kind of like enforced this idea that, the outside world is dangerous and is gone or destroyed, or there's something roaming up there. But it just turns out there is nothing up there and he just wants to control everyone. It's pretty typical kind of dystopian kind of things, but it's it's kind of dealing with a lot of censorship of this film, and in our current day and age, that is actually quite important to discuss about. Yeah, I from what I remember, I really like the characters, because the characters, they are kind of your typical kind of maybe slightly naive, slightly anxious kind of characters, but they also have this thing called intuition and a driving force for their character to do things that they want to do and what they believe in, and it's really interesting to watch that kind of unfold. And I really enjoy the film. I need to give it all another watch, and I also need to read the book in general because it's probably very good, and I swear there's more books to City of Ember. And with that film out the way, let's go on to Mortal Instruments. Now, Mortal Instruments is a very interesting one for me because I have read the book. The book is far better. Have I read the book in, since I first read it? No. I read it in 2019, I believe. Maybe 2018? I'm not too sure. But I remember really liking it, and I read it in 4 or 5 days. I read it really quickly, which I'm very surprised by because, again, as you know, I'm a slow reader. Mortal Instruments is a weird one because it has the weird kind of Star Wars sibling relationship going on, and Cassandra Clare is I'll say this slightly, interesting individual that I've read up very interesting things about. Which I don't fully know if are true or not or whatever. I haven't been in that kind of loop or space since 2018 for, Mortal Instruments, Infernal Devices, and all that, and honestly I couldn't care less. I do want to continue reading this series because I did really enjoy City of Bones. And as for the film, I'm not too keen on it. It's an enjoyable film, it's not terrible in any way. I haven't seen this film in a little while, but I have seen it 3 or 4 times and have enjoyed my time each time I've watched it. And as for the series is god-awful. I tried watching the show on numerous occasions. I managed to get past the first episode, and then I watched the second episode. Both are genuinely abysmal. It's pure garbage, and I just can't understand why they greenlit it after the first episode, or made more seasons. It has 5 seasons or something ridiculous like that. Should have been cancelled ages ago. And each time this film is made, it's so it doesn't I don't know how to explain it. It's just so strange. This isn't really dystopian. It's more urban fantasy, but YA. But I'll include it because it is YA, so why not? Who cares? I make the rules here. I'm gonna put it below City of Ember because I think as a film, City of Ember is far better than the Mortal Instruments. Mortal Instruments, again, it's weird. Oh god, not this. Not this scene. Desperately trying to remember the events of this film, and I can't for the life of me remember what happens. Oh yeah, and then you got all of them in the leather for no reason at all. It's such a strange. Mortal Instruments is strange in general. I don't get it. Oh yeah, because he has a crush on her. I swear, crush on her. I can't remember his character. It's in a league of its own. So it's now the next day, and I realised while editing I didn't have, as much as of an updated thought or kind of review of Mortal Instruments, and didn't know the entire controversy surrounding Cassandra Clare and that series as a whole. So I took it upon myself to spend last night watching the film and reading up about a few things here and there. And to say I was so unaware of what was going on it's just an understatement. Like, rewatching the film, I was just like, you know what, this is entertaining, this isn't terrible, it's giving the urban fantasy vibes, we've got Robert Sheehan, Lily Collins, I'm vibing here, I'm having a good time. Pacing's a bit quick, but I'm enjoying what I see. And then all the dumb stuff happens in the film, like, every character is really entitled to, like, a relationship for some reason. Like, they feel like they're entitled to being with someone, because you got Simon who is kind of like one of the less offenders here, because he loves Clary, or whatever her name is, but is willing to give her space. Aside from that one time where he got a message from his friend that saw her and just got a message saying, oh, it's Clary's about whatever, that's a bit creepy. And just like, Simon's okay. He's not terrible. He doesn't, like, there is a moment where he's just like, he's in Clary's room, and then, like, after the scene, which we'll get into, he's just like a bit offended or whatever. And I understand it-ish, like, he's always been there for her, whereas he has just met Jace. Where Simon's always been there for her, been there for Clary, and Jace has only been there for Clary for, like, what, a day or two, and she falls in love with him so quickly, and it's just like, whoa, that's a bit weird. So you kind of understand where he's coming from being annoyed, but also, dude, you're not entitled to being in a relationship with her. It's kind of, and then it's kind of like the way he talks to her afterwards is very manipulative, and it's just like, come on, man, just get over yourself. And then you have Jace, who gets annoyed at every single little thing, especially in that scene where you find out that Simon was in her room after their big scene, which I'll go into in a moment again, and he's just also entitled to, like, just feels so entitled to, like, that entire scenario, whatever, like, he was, like, it's just like, in that moment, it does seem like maybe Clary's leading him on, but also just no. The entire scene is so dumb, and it's created an entire conflict between the characters that just didn't need to be there. It's just a boring love triangle trope, and I typically hate love triangles the vast majority of the time. So that scene entirely is dumb. Just everyone's so entitled to being with people, it's boring. And then just Clary and Jace's relationship is so one note. Like, she's just like, oh my gosh, she's so hot, and he's just like, oh my gosh, she's so hot, and it's just really boring. And then you get to the kiss scene, and I just never felt so violently ill watching something with knowing what the twist is. And then you get to the twist, and then, like, Jace is like all dark and brooding, just like, we were lied to. just like smoldering every single time. It's just like, bro, fuck off. And then Valentine is like really sexual with both him and Clary. What's going on here? I don't remember that. I don't remember that a few years ago when I watched it. And just like, and then the end, they're just like, oh, I don't know if I believe it. And they're just like, it's just so weird. And I felt so just ill and uncomfortable watching the rest of the movie from that kiss scene onwards. I just really struggled to enjoy my time with it. My rating was like at like a solid 5, middle of the barrel, you're not getting anything great, but you're having a good time. And then from that kiss scene onwards, it's just like, I'm having the worst time possible with this film. What is happening? And like, before watching this film, I was going to buy the rest of the Mortal Instruments books. I was actually going to continue the series, as I've said in earlier in the video. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm chucking my copy of City of Bones out. Like, I don't want to see that copy ever again. And after the film, I read up on the controversy, watched a few like YouTubers talk about it, and also doing my own research alongside of it, and finding the Ron and Ginny fanfic, and it's just made me uncomfortable having the book and having had my rating so high for this stuff. And it's just tainted my enjoyment for this product that I really enjoyed. And it's so disappointing that an author can do something where it just actually ruins our entire enjoyment for a series you've liked. And I haven't really been part of like Mortal Instruments kind of book community or whatever for a while, since I first read the first book and watched the film. So I've been out of that loop for a while, so I've not really known anything about what's going on, because I don't really tend to look into author things and what's going on there behind the scenes. It's just made me really uncomfortable, and the rating for the film is now a 2 out of 10 because I still have that moment of enjoyment like lingering, which I don't want it to like be completely ruined by Cassandra Clare. I've read up so many things about fans having horrid interactions with her, of Cassandra bullying them and just making them, just belittling people, and it's just genuinely really disgusting to see that another author like this, who many people have looked up to and many people have loved their books, just does this to them, and it's just a real shame. And then you also have the Shadowhunters show alongside it, which is one of the biggest pieces of shit that I've ever seen in my life. Ender's Game. I haven't seen this film in a while, but the more I think about the film, the more I hate it. And also I'm pretty sure the author of the book is a homophobe. I think that settles the ranking for me. Okay, moving on. I'm not going to do I'm Number 4, The Host, or Fifth Wave, or The Giver, because I've not seen those films. I think I might have seen bits of I'm Number 4 and The Host, but that's literally it. And The Fifth Wave, I mean, we don't need to speak of that film at all, because it's just garbage. Maze Runner. Maze Runner as a world, as a dystopian, is terrible. As a cool sci-fi concept, it is awesome. Now, I have only read half of the first Maze Runner book, and I did say it was boring. Some of it was really good, and then it hit like a massive slump for me where I just couldn't get through it anymore. I do think that a lot of the characters are very well written. I do think it's strange that none of them are gay, because it's a bunch of guys in a place and all of them end up being straight. I don't know, it's kind of weird. I don't know, it's just kind of like it's in a weird spot of like, a dystopian, YA dystopian of it's like children versus adults, and it's very cringeworthy, especially in Divergent and all that, where it's the teenagers versus the adults kind of scenario, and it's just like, whereas in other films that we'll get to, it's everyone versus fascists. There's so many problems with the Maze Runner universe. I don't care, because these films are really good, and I'm judging these based off of just like pure enjoyment, characterization, horror, and also just filmmaking in general, because these films are made very well. The first film was made in like 30 days or something, which is incredibly fast for a film, for a feature film, like, and especially adaptation for that matter. It's just awesome. It has a great cast. It's a really enjoyable film for me, and I really like it. A thing that I half like about the second film is the fact that it's basically a zombie universe because of the solar flare from the sun, caused an infection on people or virus, whatever, and has made people infected. And I think Scott Trials is still a good film. I don't think it's as good as the first one. I think the first one is far better and looks visually better, whereas the second film visually, in a lot of places, too heavy on the CGI. Everything sometimes kind of looks a bit bland, but I like the first film more because the stakes are much higher. There's more character deaths going on. There's more, an interesting conflict between the characters. Whereas in Scorched Trials, the conflict between the characters is, and also the whole kind of depleting teenagers of kind of their essence and finding a cure from that. It's just weirdly confusing. And then we have Death Cure, which I watched almost recently, I think. I forget when I watched it. It was like 2-3 years ago or something. And I loved this film because it was everything I wanted from a dystopian, where there's an actual, war that takes place. There's an actual battle. There's a proper big conflict, and kind of all these loose ends throughout the series are kind of getting wrapped up, and kind of like things are starting to actually make sense. And it's a big fight that happens. So many people die. There's so much chaos. It feels like the stakes are where they should be, and how a dystopian should be handled when you have a revolution and have the rebels kind of, rise up and defeat the fascists. And I love this film to bits. I really do. I really enjoy it and what's going on. And I think it picks up from where Scorched Trials leaves off very well, and is so much better than the Scorched Trials. Than, it's very good. And, just great cast of characters, great chemistry. I love... What's his name? Thomas? Yeah, Thomas. I like Thomas as a character. I think he's pretty well done. I like Newt quite well. I think everyone's kind of well-rounded and established. I do think some characters like Mino and a few others could have a few more things going on. They don't necessarily have arcs, but I'm not expecting much from a YA dystopian here, so I'll cut it some slack. And then we have Hunger Games. Now, Hunger Games I watched years ago. I can't remember the exact date that I watched it, but I know I was probably a little bit too young to watch the film. And I really enjoyed when I watched it. I genuinely really liked the film. It had everything I wanted from a film at that time period, when I was getting into more violent films, getting into more horror and more action and all that. And it was everything I wanted from a 12. And then I watched Catching Fire, and I loved that film to bits. It was a big step up, in my opinion, from the first film, and everything was kind of coming together. And then there's like a massive gap between watching Catching Fire and Mockingjay Parts 1 and 2, because I just started watching Harry Potter instead. Mockingjay Part 1 and 2 are a whole other ball game, and I'll get to those later. But Hunger Games 1, in my opinion, is a near perfect film, and is a film that I could categorise as just a near perfect film in general when you take away the YA dystopian. I see it as an actual proper film that talks about politics in a very interesting way, and doesn't do a Divergent and actually shows you the districts, shows you what's going on in these people's lives, and then learning about other people's lives when you reach the games, when you reach the training area. You're kind of understanding District 1, District 2, District 3, everybody from these districts. You're learning, their class, how well are they living, how not well are they living, kind of who's been kind of more brainwashed than others, and what's going on. It's a very well crafted universe. That I think the writer Suzanne Collins, I forget. I think she does a tremendous job of making a dystopian world that kind of sets itself apart from other big dystopian universes in other books and other films. I think it does an incredible job, and the rules of the world are so well established that it's just a whole other level and ahead of all these other dystopian films that these other dystopian films don't really reach or strive towards. I think Katniss is a brilliant character to begin with, and especially when you have her volunteer for not Rue, and when you have her volunteer for Prim, it's a very big character moment for her. You're learning about her very quickly and who she is as a person, and then what's his name? How am I forgetting his name? Peter! How can I forget his name? Peter. And Peter's introduced, and you're learning about him and who he is as a person. And it's so incredibly well done, learning about these characters. And then you learn about Haymitch. You're learning about everyone else. You're learning about President Snow through these small little moments. And it's built up so well. And then when you finally get into the games, there is a massive switch up. And I just want to say, from a filmmaking standpoint, this film is amazing. I'm very weird, and I love the cinematography in this film. I know that's a massive issue that loads of people have with this film. I think it's great the way it's shot. I think it gets into Katniss's POV and into kind of the world as it is, it's not going to be pleasant. It's going to be kind of very dirty, very grim, you know. And I like the handheld style. I like the editing style very well. You know, some people have the kind of, you know, opinion that, you know, that kind of style should have happened when the game's begun. I disagree. I think it works throughout, and I like the fact that it's more elevated throughout the games, that it's more shaky and, you know, more kind of disrupted and unconventional. And I think that benefits towards the film so much more than the other Hunger Games films do, because the other Hunger Games films don't do a good job of that. One thing that I do dislike about the Hunger Games films is the fact that after the first film, they very much hold back on the violence and, you know, how dark this universe is. Because this first film is so gory, to the point where they had to change the rating in the UK and also edit out a bunch of blood so that they can get back the 12 rating. Just watch the 15 rated version, it's much better. It's what Hunger Games should be. It's dark, it's violent, it's gross, it's grim, it's horrifying to everyone involved. And when you make it a 12, you kind of strip that away, and kind of it's confusing as why you would want to do that, other than, you know, make more money because it's a 12. And, you know, I just think this is a great film as a whole, and the fact that you learn so much about the capital and surviving in this place, especially before when you have to put on an act, you have to do all these things so that you get sponsors, that you get all these things, and it's so well done. It's a literal lens into our world. It's an incredible film, and I love it to bits. And then you have its sequel, which many people dub as the best Hunger Games film, and not gonna lie, y'all are wrong. You all are so wrong. I'm gonna put it there. This, like, I'm not gonna, okay, this film is very good. I will say that. It's a very good film, very solid. The issues that I have is the characters in the games and how, convenient it is, and, you know, how easy they get through the games, and how repetitive the kind of add-on to the games are. Like, every hour there's something new. It's like, this hour happens, something happens, you know, the mist happens, they get to a safe spot, the monkeys happen, they get to a safe spot. You know, it's just a repeat after repeat after repeat of the same similar events happening, and it's so tiring, and I got really bored of that. And I hate the fact that the one deluded character kind of says TikTok, TikTok, or whatever, and all these other things. It's just a very plot convenient heavy film, and, you know, that does, in some ways, it does make sense, because some of the people in this kind of game are completely and fully aware that there's a rebellion going on, and they're trying to get Peter and Katniss out of the games so that they can begin the rebellion and rise up and whatnot. I don't mind that, but it's the amount of plot convenience that there is, that it's to the point where it's just like, what's the point in there being a mystery to this? What's the point in having, you know, this at all? And just a lot of the characters I found to be really boring, and I did not care for really any of them. I think the exception here is Finnick. I think he's a brilliant character from the get-go, and I like the fact that he's very tongue-in-cheek with Katniss to begin with. You're kind of, like, unsure if he's a good person or he's a bad person, and you kind of find out that he is kind of more leaning towards good, but he's a very grey character, and I really like that, because I think I would be very bored if he was just evil or he was just completely good. I like the fact that he had some greyness to it, because it makes this world seem so much more real than just things being good and bad, and that's boring storytelling. For me, this film, I love everything before the games. As soon as we hit the games, I kind of just, you know, it just drops off for me dramatically. You know, the first half of this film is like a near 10, the rest of it's like a 6 or a 7, and it kind of evens out to an 8 by the end. And another character that I do really like is Plutarch. I think his name is Plutarch. And he reminds me of a character from Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Garrick. And he's very similar to Plutarch in the way that he can get into people's heads and make them do what he wants, while making the other person think it's actually them. Garrick is so similar. It just gets into people's heads and just it's an incredible thing to witness, especially from the actor R.I.P. He's phenomenal in this and phenomenal in every single thing I've seen him in, especially The Master. The Master is so good. And yeah, I think Plutarch is a brilliant character and probably one of the best in this entire film series, aside from Mockingjay, but we'll get to that when we get to Mockingjay. Yeah, I just think this, this film is good, but it's has so many flaws, but they kind of even out by the end, and it will never top the first film for me. I'll just rip the band-aid off now, and this film is awful, genuinely awful. It's, everything that happens in this film is completely fine, and the issue lies in the pacing and the fact that this film is 2 hours and 10 minutes, and it shouldn't be. These films should not be split in half, and I think they did it because they saw it work with Deathly Hallows and a bunch of other things coming out around that time, but even Deathly Hallows doesn't work as 2 parts, but that's another video entirely. This film is so boring, I genuinely checked my phone during it just to see if, just to check socials, and then I look up and we're on the same scene and nothing has changed, and every single thing that was said before I looked at my phone was said again and repeated. It's such a poorly made film. Visually it's awful, and I despise this film so much. I had so much hope, but it's so bad. And the points the film are trying to make is, it's completely fine. It's a rebellion, it's a revolution, rise up, whatever. It's such a dry film, and there's like bones there, but there's no meat at all, and some of the bones are kind of broken, and kind of feeling like Katniss at the end of the second film. I can't stand this film. I think it's awful, and if it was 40 minutes instead, I think it would be significantly better. We'd get from point A to B far quicker, and it doesn't need to be drawn out for 2 hours and 10 minutes, sorry. Doesn't need to be drawn out that much. Mockingjay Part 2 is a better film. I think, yeah, there. It's fine. It's almost good. The issue is the fact that it's kind of coming off of the first part, which is abysmal, and this film is very rough to start off with. I really contemplated if I wanted to watch it at all, because I was so done with part 1. With Mockingjay Part 1 sets up Coin, who is basically worse than Snow in every way possible, and I'm surprised nobody noticed that she was strange to begin with, and I'm genuinely surprised that Plutarch didn't notice that she was worse than Snow, but also that could have been his intention all along, and he's just evil too. I think Katniss is a little bit dumbed down in these films. I also do not care a single... I don't care for a moment what's happening with Peter. I couldn't give a shit. Gale, die please. I think he should have died in Catching Fire, not because I hate his character, but because I think it would have raised the stakes for Catching Fire and would have made that film a little bit better if there was a little bit more going on. Yeah, I hate Gale. He can die in a hole. Who cares? Peter, I don't really care what's going on with you. And all these other characters that show up in Mockingjay Part 1 and 2, I couldn't care for either. For me, this film doesn't get good until they're in District 1, I believe, after kind of the flood of the weird black ink kind of thing, and somebody's body is kind of stripped up in coil and just mangled. From that moment on, it genuinely felt like I was going back to this world, back to this dark, grim world of what's going on, and I really enjoyed myself from there on out. I really liked the tunnel scene with all these creatures. I did think it was a bit strange that there's just randomly creatures in this universe now, but it's a sci-fi, I'll let it slide. I mean, I guess they created creatures in the game, so I guess, sure, it makes sense, I guess. And then they finally kind of, storm the Capitol off-screen. They storm the Capitol off-screen. That's probably one of the dumbest decisions this film has made, and I wish it was shown. But, the scene before that was told to us, where Prim dies, I really liked that moment because it genuinely established who Coin is as a person when you find out that that was Coin instead of Snow, and that's a really cool reveal, especially for Katniss, even though she should have seen that coming from the first place, because I don't know why Katniss is so trusting in these films. And also, another thing about trusting and all that is everyone in the rebellion is aware of the fact that people in the capital and other things have to kind of put on a front when they're like on video and talking about stuff, because some of them have done it. Katniss has done it, and they should know Katniss that's done it, and there's definitely been conversations there and whatnot, and everyone kind of says Peter's a traitor from what he says, and I'm just like, I don't think everyone in this room is going to think Peter's a traitor. I think everyone's going to be like, well, not everyone, but some people are definitely going to be like very conflicted about that, like, oh no, he is under their influence, and you can see through his body language and the fact that he's thinning in every single video, that he can't, say anything, otherwise he might get popped. Anything, but it's kind of this mob mentality kind of thing, which does happen. So it's half and half. It's more of a nitpick than kind of really anything. But yeah, and then you have the ending where they're in that meeting and Coin wants a Hunger Games for the people in the capital and District 1 and 2 and whatever. And the fact that everyone, like, some people go, that's insane, but some people like that, I'm just like, there we go, there's a balance of things where people have differing opinions on something that's being said. But through the knowledge that Katniss has of what Coin has done, bombing those people, bombing her sister, she's just like, you know what? Yeah, let's do these games. I'll be there too to, like, start it and, kill Snow. And then we get to that scene, that long drawn-out moment where she's going down the kind of stretch, whatever, gets her bow out, aims it at Snow, Coin's having her speech, whatever, which is very ironic, and I love it to bits. And then shoots Coin, she dies, whatever, and then everyone swarms Snow and killing him and ripping him to shreds, whatever. And I kind of blanked after that moment because I really didn't care about this film at all. I think the film's fine as a finale to this series, which starts off just perfectly. It's such a shame to just see it kind of drop, you have the first film, have the second film, slight drop, Mockingjay Part 1, and then just Part 2 is kind of there. I really dislike Mockingjay as a whole. It's a shame that Death Cure did a better kind of rebellion, kind of revolution film than Hunger Games did, and Maze Runner is arguably, in the middle of the barrel and probably has one of the worst kind of worlds here because it does not make sense at all. Whereas Divergent's world kind of makes slightly sense, but it's just boring. So I'm currently editing this video and I completely forgot to mention a few things throughout. One thing that I forgot to mention about the Hunger Games that I love so much is how it creates a sense of anxiety throughout the entire two films. Now, the Mockingjay Part 1 and 2, it loses any sense of anxiety or tension. The first two, genuinely, some of the most anxiety-inducing films that I have seen, and my heart was racing throughout. Like, that rarely happens whenever I watch stuff. Like, I'm just so in awe of just, like, the ability to be able to create that sort of atmosphere. And also, in talking about characters, I've completely forgot to mention Joanna. I think that she is a very smart individual and is a big anchor for this film, especially, having that tie with Finnick and with what's going on. I think she's very well done, and especially going into Mockingjay Part 2, I like the fact that we see a very different side of her in that, but it also makes complete sense for her character, when she's in agreement of making a Hunger Games for the people who originally created the Hunger Games and all that. I really like the fact that she believes in that and agrees with Coin. I think that's a really interesting turn of her character. She'll do all these things for Katniss and the rebellion, but also she's a complete psychopath, and I really like her character for that. Another character that I'm very much half and half on is Beatty. I love Jeffrey Wright to bits. I love him to bits. I think he's an amazing actor. And I think one of the benefits of, you know, Catching Fire being really good is because of the change in the Hunger Games. The fact that all the victors are going to be playing in the games. And I think that's an incredible twist and turn that the writer pulls off and achieves, because it's like, oh. And you can feel, again, the anxiety and the tension fill the room for these characters. You can see it in Katniss, you can see it in Peter, you can feel it in everyone. And it's genuinely amazing storytelling and amazing filmmaking that you can pull that off. Going back to BT, I think he's a poorly written character, but also well written. Well, poorly written but well acted. I think that's the best way to go about that. I think it's really cool that he's like a very smart individual of like seeing things and like connecting the dots, which, you know, I like Wiress, I think her name is Wiress. I just can't remember her name for the life of me. The one that's insane. I think I like their dynamic and I like their connection, but it's just the convenience of, they just feel like plot convenience, which I'm pretty sure that is what's supposed to happen, because I think from what I remember of watching the films, I watched them very recently, but so much has happened since. I think they were part of the rebellion and knowing what was going to happen. Him having a copper wire that he developed so that he could pull off this stunt with the tree, whatever. It's super convenient. Again, the tick-tock, super convenient. That's like my general issue with those two moments and those two characters, is just the heavy convenience with what's going on in the story. I also really like Mags. I think she's like a great addition to kind of, you know, Finnick's kind of arc throughout this entire film. And another character that I want to touch upon, Effie, I think both her and Haymitch have probably the best development throughout the entire, like, 4 films, because they, like, you immediately see Effie as, like, an evil person in the first film, and then Catching Fire, you're on Essie's side, and in Mockingjay, she's, like, a mother to Katniss and Peter. She's, like, she cares so much for them and about them, and you learn that she kind of, you know, she loves all this stuff. She loves, like, dressing up and whatever, and, you know, likes things to be a certain way. But you understand that through what she has been through. Again, Haymitch. I think Haymitch has one of the worst developments when you get to part 2. Not necessarily, you know, the first 2 films. The first 2 films, I think he's an incredible character. Part 2, there's barely any of him, and there's more Gale, and that's just an issue in of itself. You know, they also make him sober, so that's why he's gone. But also when he's there, it's just like, it's not the same character, it's not the same person. You know, I think so much of this kind of change kind of loses his character in a big way. I really wasn't keen on that. With all that being said, I'm now going to stop rambling on and get back to the main section of the video. That is my ranking for YA dystopians and kind of YA fantasy, and they're sprinkled within. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do that just to irritate some people, and, you know, because why not? It's funny. Yeah, I'm happy with this ranking. Let me know what your ranking is in the comments down below, or if you really care at all for YA at the moment. But yeah, hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.